Good morning. Joe Justice here, coming to you live November 28th, 2022. It is the last week of November. It is the Monday after Thanksgiving. I hope you guys had an amazing Thanksgiving. We had a great time with the whole family, came in together. We usually get together at my mom's house, and we enjoy spending time together. Of course, ate lots of food and lots of stuff. My kids actually refer to, the Thanksgiving turkey and dressing and all the fixings and all that. They refer to that as Thanksgiving food. So they were like, can we have Thanksgiving food another day? Can we have Thanksgiving food in the summertime? Can we have Thanksgiving food for lunch? Because we had lots of leftovers, of course. I'm sure you guys did the same thing. Biggest thing with Thanksgiving is enjoy it, be grateful, be thankful. Don't think about losing weight or staying in shape or anything else when it comes to Thanksgiving. I'm a big believer in enjoying yourself and enjoying your life. So I was wanting to talk to you guys today about 5 questions that you should ask somebody you admire. I was thinking about this because I'll tell you a story. Years ago, of course, I spent years and still do edit a lot of video, and I used to do it professionally for clients quite a bit more than I do now. And I remember I was working with the CEO of this company, a design company, and we were putting together this video. And he had all kinds of people in the room with him, all kinds of his teammates and staff and everything. And as they were all working together, and he would make a suggestion on the video, and then they'd say, oh, no. And then at one point, they were just kind of bickering between themselves, and he was just kind of sitting there with his arms folded, as they were sitting and talking. And I was kind of chuckling because I realized what was going on. Like, nobody was asking him anything. Nobody. He's the owner of the company. He's the one making all the decisions. He is the one that created the company, that built the company. And here he was in this room with all these people that all have their own bright ideas, and nobody's asking him what he thinks of anything. And he just looked at me and he said, they think I'm a potted plant. And that always cracked me up, because that is absolutely the true with people you admire, believe it or not. I know it's hard to believe, because you think and I'm telling you, and this will be from top to bottom. This will be, I guarantee you this happens to people like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. You name them. Warren Buffett. All these guys at the very tippy top. I remember I heard there was a guy that his name is Dennis Prager, and he does a national radio show. And he started out. He does a lot of Jewish commentaries on the Bible. He's a Jewish man that does a lot of tours around the country, because that's like his specialty, is understanding the Torah and all that kind of stuff. And he said when he got his first job to give a speech, to give a presentation on some kind of esoteric meaning of some part of the Bible that had to do with Hebrew and all this kind of stuff, he called his mom about it, and she said, it was his first paying gig, and she said, but sweetie, I can barely even listen to you. Why would anybody pay to listen to you? That's what it's like from top to bottom. You can be an absolute expert in anything, and the people that are around you, they don't listen to you. They don't recognize you. They don't understand the value that you have. And I tell you all of that. I tell you those stories because I want you to understand that successful people have the exact same feeling. Successful people love when people ask them for advice. A lot of times you probably think, well, I don't want to ask this guy for advice. I don't want to bother him, or this woman for advice. I don't want to bother her. But that you're not bothering them at all. You have to get out of this mindset where you think that you're a bother by asking questions. Believe me when I tell you that if you talk to successful people, if you ask them, how did you do this? Now, you have to ask it with an open mind, open ears. You have to listen. You're not trying to get something out of them. You're not trying to ask them a question so that then you can sell them on your product or something like that. But if you genuinely find somebody that you're interested in and you want to know how they got to where they got to, I guarantee you, if you ask them, they will tell you. So I wanted to give you 5 questions that you can ask anybody that you admire, anybody that's successful, that you admire, that you would like to have more information from, how they achieved what they achieved. And if you listen to these questions, if you ask these questions, ask any one of these questions, don't have like a notepad. You don't need to, jot everything down. And don't ask these to somebody you admire as a test. Have these questions, have these 5 questions in the back of your mind. Anytime you're in an opportunity to speak with someone that you admire, maybe it's at a networking event, maybe you see him out on the street, maybe it's your boss. It could very easily be your boss when you see him in the elevator, you see him walking up the steps. You have an opportunity to talk to him. Ask one of these 5 questions. You'll learn a lot and you'll get a lot of value out of it. So let's take a look at the questions. What are your thoughts on failure? That's the first one. So that's a pretty open question, and that's you're not asking have you failed, what was it like to fail, or anything like that. You're going to ask their thoughts on failure. Most people will tell you if they're successful, they'll tell you that failure is just part of success. There's really no way around that. But it's a really good question because you want to see what most people think. What might surprise you is you're not going to get a lot of people that are going to go, oh, I've never failed. I've done everything perfect every step of the way, because that's not how it works in real life. The more you ask this question of people, the more that you're going to discover just how much people fail and how things do not work out the way you expect. So that's a great question, and that's a great question you can ask of anybody that's successful. Second question on the list here is, how do you deal with difficult people or situations? Again, that's super valuable. Anybody that's managed a lot of people, that can be valuable. I'm not good at managing people. It's not one of the things that I really enjoy. So, I have my techniques for managing people. But some people are so good at it, it just blows my mind. When you see leaders that have big teams and lots of employees and they're able. So I heard this story over the weekend of a guy that worked at Apple, and he worked at Apple back before Steve Jobs left originally, and he was still working there when Steve Jobs came back. And one of the things that Steve Jobs was terrible with people. He was just awful with people. So one of the things that the guy mentioned was that he would usually work with a manager. So when he came back, before he would work directly with people, and it was always disastrous. But when he came back, he had been seasoned a little bit, and he would only work with basically the upper level managers, and he found people that could then, that were upper level that could explain it on down, and that was super valuable. So Steve Jobs would then only work directly with 10, 15 people in the company, and that was good for him because he wasn't good with people. So that could be an example of how Steve Jobs would explain that situation. How does he work with difficult people? He found ways. He realized that he was difficult, and he found ways to, not work directly with people. How do you pull off? This is question number 3 here on my list. How did you pull off your biggest accomplishment? Now, listen carefully. If you ever ask this to anybody, they'll usually be pretty humble about it, and they'll hem and haw about it. But if you listen carefully, they'll tell you some real nuggets of what it took, and people love answering that question. But they will typically answer that humbly, and you have to really kind of pull out of them what they actually did. And what do you think is the most important lesson you've ever learned in life? That one's another good one. That'll usually get you some really interesting answers, and you don't know where that one's going to lead. Listen carefully with a question like that, and then ask follow-up questions. That'll be valuable for you. And what would you recommend to someone just starting out? Now, this is a very key question because I'm sure that you've experienced in your own lifetime. You do something the first time and it's just terrible. And then you do it again and it's still terrible. And then you do it again and it's a little bit better. And you learn as you go. You start out terrible and then eventually you get good and everyone just thinks that you were always good. But you can usually tell, oh, this is what I discovered. You could tell people that were just starting out, this is what I discovered. The first few hundred times I did it this way very poorly. But here's the way that you can do it. And a lot of times people that are very successful will have the exact same experience, and they'll be able to give you some shortcuts. They'll be able to tell you things like, don't focus on this. This isn't really important. Focus on that. They'll also tell you things like how the market's moved. If you're talking about successful people, they'll tell you things like if the market's changed since they were in it, they'll say, oh, back when I first started, these things were very common and these are very good, but it's not like that anymore. And that means that you can learn from that, because maybe any books or anything that you would get today would be talking about stuff that was the way it was back when this successful person started. So you can learn those opportunities and you can say, aha, well, that book doesn't work anymore. So that question, what would you recommend for someone just starting out? And I mean, sometimes that answer might be, don't get into it. It's not a good business anymore, or this isn't a good activity anymore. Don't try it. Don't be like me. That happens sometimes. That can be tough medicine too. So there's something to get started. 5 questions to ask somebody that you admire. And again, I do want to recommend you do that. Talk to people that you admire. Believe me when I tell you, anybody that you admire, don't be intimidated by them. They love, if you talk to successful people, they love telling you how they became successful, what they did to become successful. They love sharing that information. It's kind of an inherent part, kind of mentorship is kind of the inherent part of human nature. And you can learn a tremendous amount from people by asking them just some simple questions. So take these questions, have them in the back of your mind whenever you get, like I say, if you're stuck in the elevator with somebody, you're at a networking event or something, you find somebody that you admire, that you find successful, ask them one of these questions. You'll get a lot of value out of it, and that's how you'll learn and improve yourself. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great weekend. Great weekend. What's wrong with me? Have a great week, because we are just getting started. We are going to have an exciting time, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.